And that is where they found it. The heart of the mountain.
Hi everyone, I'm Luke Hector and you're watching The Broken Meeple. This is a YouTube channel about board games where I give reviews, top 10s and my honest opinions, regardless of the consequences.
Get on with it.
Finally, now that I've caught up with the majority of the essence stuff I need to do, I can actually get round to reviewing a game that I should have reviewed a long time ago, although part of that was because of the delivery. Yes, this is Deep Rock Galactic, based on the video game of the same name, and this was meant to be on my doorstep about, what, December last year? And, no, it didn't end up that way. It didn't end up in January or February. I'm not even sure even March. I can't remember when this game arrived for me. You know, I've lost complete track of when it delivered. But suffice to say, it was a lot later than I thought it was going to be. I mean, this almost was supposed to be something I should have considered for 2022, but now this is clearly a 2023 game for me. Now, background knowledge that you do need to be aware of. I have a big love for the video game that this is based on. It's probably my most played game I have at the moment because it's such a great pick up and play experience. I've already got dwarfs like leveled up to the max. I've got so many hours sunk into this game, as you can see, and I can play it on max difficulty. I'm pretty solid at the game, but if I've ever got 20 minutes spare and I just feel like, you know what, I don't know what I'm doing, let's just shoot a few spiders in space or whatever, then I can just put it on, boom, straight into a server, play a game, 20 odd minutes, maybe even less, and I can just jump out or just play some more. I like games that I can just go in with that kind of ease. So when Mood Publishing decided, ooh, we're gonna do a board game, and it came out on Kickstarter, I, for the most part, was like, you know, really excited, but then I was also a little bit worried because video game licensed board games don't tend to have the biggest track record for being really good games. On top of that, first time publisher, first time Kickstarter, and it's like, uh-oh, this could be Kickstarter problems galore here, we don't know. And so I decided to fork out the money for this. This is not a review copy, I spent my own money on this, but I was a little bit like worried that, oh, I don't know, should I back it, should I not? Mainly I did it because, well, it's Deep Rock Galactic. I have to at least try it, otherwise I'm kind of like doing myself a disservice here. But I have now been able to play this plenty of times, both multiplayer and solo, and I can finally give this a review, turn my critic brain on for a bit, because, you know, I've got to turn the fanboy brain off of the video game and switch on the critic thing to say, is this game solid enough to buy? So if you have never played the video game before, here's the rundown. You control one of 4 dwarfs. You are basically part of a conglomerate called Deep Rock Galactic. It's a mining operation in space. They go to all these asteroids and they mine out precious minerals, make money. You know, it's dwarf mining in space, what do you expect? Diggy diggy hole and all that. But the idea with this is that these asteroids are not, you know, unpopulated. They have all sorts of weird spider creatures and bugs and, you know, various types of nasties that can sort of come at you and do all sorts of things, but mainly they just want to eat you.
Hello.
You are, of course, kitted for this task. So your 4 dwarfs, from an engineer, a gunner, a driller, and a scout, are kitted out with various weaponry and various items in order to take out these bugs as they come at you. But what you are doing is you're essentially traversing the landscape, which is done by a scenario, or you can even create your own, and you have various things to overcome, not just the spiders and bugs in general, but also the landscape itself. You've got deep pits, you've got, you know, closed off areas, you might have walls in the way that you've got to drill through, and so everybody has got a little bit of kit to help traverse the landscape as well. It's got a fair bit of dice rolling, where you are rolling dice to hit enemies, and you've got different weapon types that will allow you to shoot like armor piercing or fire or explosive or just general bullets. But the way the gameplay works is simply from taking 3 actions, which can be a various case of moving, shooting, using your pickaxe for various actions, calling down resupply pods, trading with your teammates, that kind of thing. And then once you've done your 3 actions, you'll flip over a card of an event deck, which will spawn enemies, make them activate and do their own thing, maybe do some other things that are reminiscent from the video game, and it's essentially rinse repeat until one of 2 things will generally happen. One, you'll actually be able to escape. You'll fulfill your objective objectives for the scenario. You'll get in and then your drop pod will return back. You'll get back on it and escape. Great, you win. But you can also lose if your swarm marker, which is a tracker at the bottom of the board, which essentially triggers a lot of bugs appearing, gets to the end before you finish the mission, because it's essentially a timer to say, look, there's far too many bugs here, you're going to get killed, doesn't matter how many guns you've got, you're screwed. But then also you might actually fail just by the fact that all 4 of you get knocked unconscious by the bugs during it, because you only have so much health. It's a co-op game. It is 1 to 4 players. It can be played solo, it can be played multi-handed, it can be played with other players, and essentially it's a very simple game in that regard. You move around the landscape, get the minerals, get your objectives, shoot down bugs willy-nilly with all sorts of different weapons and upgrades, and try and complete the scenario before the timer runs out.
Rock and stone to the bone!
Now, I'm only going to briefly touch on aesthetics and that because I have got the deluxe version with the miniatures. The retail version won't have some of this stuff. Now, cardboard components wise, I didn't upgrade any of the cardboard stuff. These are decent enough. I mean, you've got cardboard tiles for the areas, you've got little tokens for, you know, the various bits that your like dwarfs can have, like zip lines and explosives and that. You've got, you know, a lot of decent custom dice with custom symbology and easily distinguishable colors on there. I mean, you know, it's pretty easy to tell which dice are what just by the symbology, even if you can't tell, say, yellow from blue from green. So colorblind people don't really have to worry much in this game. But also you've got these like typical like plasticky crystal things for the minerals, which suits the minerals but also look cool. One thing I particularly like is your player board. Your player board's a dual layer and they've got space already pre-printed for your abilities and your main weapon, but then you've got bits for your ammo slots, you've got your health, you've got the secondary weapon slot, you can put like various things you've collected on the middle of your board. You know, it's a pretty decent board all round. Now, the card artwork, there's not a huge amount of artwork in this game. Most of it is reminiscent from the video game, and honestly, most of the art you kind of see is on the face of your player board. The card art is fine. I mean, it looks cool and it fits the theme, but there's not a lot of it. It's fairly dark, it does the job, but yeah, this isn't one that you look at to be like, ooh, really, really pretty in that regard. But I will say, the miniatures, if you do pay out for those miniatures, they are fantastic. I love these things. They look just like the video game. They're really authentic. They're really well done. Lots of detail. If you're a painter, which I am not, you're going to have a field day with some of these. And that's just the dwarfs. I love the bug ones as well. I mean, there's just so many cool varieties of like different bugs here. You know, you got the tiny little grunt or these tiny little spindly ones. You've got the big bulbous exploder. You've got, you know, web spitters and slashers and, you know, Mac Terror like flying bug spawns, which are on little stands. You know, they're really cool, but not dodgy little plasticky stands. No, they're on a proper rock miniature so they don't fall off. But believe me, they can get bigger, much bigger. Oh my word, yes. Brood Nexus, you know, the guy there, Spitballer, you know, pretty sizable miniature here. And then you get the Praetorians, which are already pretty sizable in themselves with big gnashy claws and that. But then you might be unlucky enough to have to deal with an oppressor. Look at this thing. This thing is huge. I mean, granted, it's huge in the video game, but man, sometimes I almost like the fact the oppressor comes out. I mean, it's a bit of a pain to take down, but man, does it look imposing on the board. But yeah, I mean, the miniatures, absolutely fantastic. You gotta pay for them. They are expensive. Not gonna deny that. This is definitely a game that you are probably paying more money than you ideally would for a board game of this nature, but man, you're getting good quality.
Did you see anything? No, sir. I didn't see you playing with your dolls again. Good!
The theme and immersion is very important to get right here because you're doing a video game license here. This isn't like a Euro game where, okay, fine, it's victory points and here's some mechanics, whatever. Much I like them to be thematic, but for a game like this, where you're going around shooting enemies and co-op and dice rolling and stuff, you need the theme to be spot on. Well done. You've got the theme 99.9% spot on here. Everything looks the part. The one exception miniature that I thought looked a bit weird is from a mini expansion. The Menace, I don't think looks quite like the one in the video game, but that's a small gripe. Everything else here looks fantastic. You know, the imagery is all from the video game. The dwarfs look like their video game counterparts. You know, all of the same logos, the same imagery. I mean, look at that box cover. I mentioned that there's not a huge amount of art in the game, but that is a striking box cover. not just aesthetics, the actual gameplay is like the video game. The engineer's got his little sentry gun, it stocks down and starts swiveling around and shoots stuff. You know, the minigunner, you know, shoots but can take free actions to just unload his clip if he wants to. The driller drills through walls, the scout doesn't care about pits because he can grapple gun over them, and all this stuff, if you are familiar with the video game, is going to instantly be like, yes, 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 got it right, got it right. Even some of the events that take care of some of the other stuff that aren't represented by miniatures, like cave leeches and stuff, all of it is from the game. You can tell that they got decent amount of help from the actual video game publisher and were passionate about the game itself. And to be fair, it's no surprise, because when I met them at Essen, they told me that the publisher who makes the game, I think Ghost Ship Games or whatever, is literally down the road from Mood Publishing. So they're pretty much within like walking distance of each other practically. And so this is how they were easily able to collaborate on the game. But they've remained faithful. I was worried that they were going to abstract too many things, and there are one or two little things that are abstracted or changed from the video game in some respects, because you've got to obviously make it work for a board game. But honestly, it really does nail that theme, and it's wonderfully immersive when you play. If you know the game, you are making quotes, you're getting into the co-op nature, you're working together, and you have to work as a team. More on that later. You know, it's all solid. Now, if you have not played the video game at all, I don't think it matters. You know, I will explain basically from the video game, but I have played this with many people who've never touched the Deep Rock Galactic video games. A couple of them hadn't even heard of it before, and they still got immersed in it. They were enjoying their characters, enjoying the weapons they got, and the co-op nature. The theme and immersion is top notch. More on that co-op nature. Co-op games need to feel like it's not just a Lone Ranger, not have alpha gaming, that kind of thing. This one definitely, I think, does a good job at mitigating that. You could technically have one person try and dictate other people's actions, but at the end of the day, you have control over your own character, and there's not necessarily terrible moves in this game. You know, you think, right, well, I could go over there and grab that mineral. Okay, great, but then you could also shoot these bugs that are coming your way. Well, I could leave them for now, they're okay. Or I could take out the stalagmite tile and see if I can get more minerals out of it. Hit that loot bug over there. You know, maybe it's time I, you know, upgraded my secondary gun so it was like overclocked and stuff. A lot of these actions are good, and it kind of gives me the same feel as something like Flashpoint Fire Rescue. If you remember Flashpoint Fire Rescue, it was a fire rescue co-op game where you had a lot of different actions, and yes, it was co-op and somebody could technically tell someone what to do, but because there's so many good things you can do, the player has freedom to pick what they want to do. And here, you will discuss with other players, like, you know, what do I reckon I should do? Well, you know, you're going next, so how about you do this so they can set up? And certainly people are discussing, they're interacting with each other. But the person has utmost freedom to say, you know what, all of these actions seem pretty cool. What do you fancy doing? And they can decide what they want to do. So nobody feels like anyone's alpha gaming. This definitely requires the team to work together, especially if you've got all four of you. If you've got 4 dwarfs here, bearing in mind that you're going to be revealing an event card after every turn, not every round, every turn. It could be a while before it gets back round to your turn, not like in terms of downtime, but in terms of how long before you get to act to what's going on around you, that you need to rely on other teammates. People need to get you across obstacles. People need to shoot bugs and get you out of harm's way. Somebody's got to go get the minerals if somebody's shooting the bugs, because you're on a timer. One of those things that I love about co-ops, that you work together, you interact, and you all get to have fun equally.
Leave no dwarf behind.
The variety in this game is really solid as well. I mean, bearing in mind I've got a mini expansion to this, but all it did was add 2 more enemies, and that's essentially it. Maybe a few event cards, that's it. So excluding that mini expansion, you still get a lot in here. I mean, the stuff that is in these trays in terms of like the miniatures that I've got, all the different enemies, there's a lot of different enemies for you to fight. I mean, you have 10 different enemies in the game on this board that tells you what they all do and like their various stats and stuff. So you've got 10 enemies already, but then you've got a decent amount of event cards. I mean, the event deck is pretty sizable for what it is. I mean, you've got, this wasn't even all of it. Let me show you that's a swarm deck. So you've got a decent amount of events here. You're not going to go through anywhere near this amount of the deck during a game. So you're going to see like different things come out in different orders and change up how the game progresses. But then you've also got a lot of variety with rock and stone cards, which are essentially like powerful abilities you can play only on your teammates. You only get one of these in a game unless you kill big enemies, so you don't see many of these, but these can be really solid for variety. But I particularly love the weapon layouts you can get. Here, you have got so much variety. You've got, for example, let me separate these out a little bit, here we go. So you've got all of these secondary guns, right? Everybody's essentially got 2 guns apiece, but you don't have to say, right, the driller normally carries a plasma charger, so he'll get the secondary gun. No, if the scout wants to use the plasma charger, you can take the plasma charger, doesn't matter, you can mix and match. On top of that, everybody gets a throwable item at the start of the game. You only get one. You might find another one in the event deck, but for the most part, you'll just have one. Sticker grenade, satchel charge, proxy grenade, cryo grenade, plasma grenade, incendiary grenade, frag grenade, corrosive bomb, soil smasher, electrocution grenade, inhibitor, tunnel carver, phosphor, impact axe. There's loads of throwables in here, and you can mix and match these to your heart's content. But it doesn't stop there. Your main weapon is pre-printed here, but there's a layer, because they even include other primary weapons for each class. Now, annoyingly, you can't mix and match these because they are specific to a class. It makes sense in the game, and they are color-coded, but, you know, maybe I don't want to use the minigun for the gunner. Maybe today I'd like to use the Thunderhead the Thunderhead cannon. Okay, great. The driller normally goes around with a flamethrower, which I love using in the game. Sticky flames, hee. Burn the ground and let everything wander through the flames. I love it. But maybe I don't feel like the flamethrower. Maybe I feel like the cryo cannon. Maybe I don't want the grenade launcher. I want the breach cutter or the assault rifle, not the sniper rifle.
That's definitely you.
Did I mention this game has a lot of scenarios in it? You get a scenario booklet with 14 scenarios in it. 14, and they range from novice to veteran difficulties with different layouts and different objectives. So that's already 14 games, and you can play this in a deep dive campaign, but you don't have to. You can do it in a 3-part campaign. I've never done a deep dive. I don't see the need to do a deep dive in this game unless you've got the entire day to yourself, but you can just play one scenario, any of them, and it doesn't matter. There's no overarching story. I mean, the story of Deep Rock Galactic is literally, I'm a dwarf, I go onto a planet, I mine stuff, and I shoot things. That's basically the plot of Deep Rock Galactic. It's pretty simple. But then at the back, you have a simple method for designing your own missions. It tells you, like, how to place revealed caves and what event you want to do in that. So even when you're done with the 14 missions, you can just create your own. There's endless variety in the game, and with the expansions on the way to introduce more enemies and more stuff in the video game, this is something that's going to be fresh every time I play it. The variety, I mentioned that you can play this solo or with multiple characters, so you can have 2, 3, or 4 player. You can play by yourself using multiple dwarfs, or you can play with Bosco. You get Bosco, the little robot that follows you around, and in solo mode, it has a couple of actions from a variety, and basically you do your thing, Bosco does its thing, and then you draw an event and keep going. It's actually a pretty decent way to play solo. I mean, I've enjoyed playing multiple dwarfs, but Bosco's fairly powerful as an ally to use, and so using just yourself in Bosco makes for a very entertaining game. I played one just the other week as a driller with Bosco, did a veteran mission, and it was really good fun.
This is why Superman works alone.
Now, I have been gushing about this game a lot, fair enough, but I gotta turn my critic brain on because no game is perfect, games have flaws. This one main flaw it has is the rulebook. The rules are very straightforward. You know, I mean, you've got 3 actions out of a possible 6 or 7, and you draw an event card, and that's it. Next player, keep going until you finish the game. You know, very straightforward rules, and that's a positive. I think that's a really solid aspect of this game. The fact that it is a good, not quite pick up and play. You got to set up a few things, but it's pretty straightforward to teach to anybody, really. But the main thing with this is that the rulebook is not necessarily the best to reference stuff, particularly the player abilities, because you've got a summary of your player abilities on your board, but it's not enough to understand how they fully work, and some of them, like the sentry gun and like the driller's fire and a couple of other bits, you don't really know them fully until you read them in the rulebook, and they're not at the end, they're not in the start, they're kind of in the middle end, and it's just a bit like, annoying to have to pull this out and reference it. And sadly, there's no other reference cards in this game. I would have liked there to have been like a proper reference aid for every class. So it has the normal actions that you can do in the game with some iconography in that, but also it has specifically that this reference aid is for the driller. This is how your 2 special abilities work. This is a scout. This is how your abilities work. I've had to print off from the internet, you know, some good reference aids, and there are 1 or 2 on there. This one in particular, which gives you like turn overview, enemy activation, icons and tokens. Very good reference aid that I use. But again, even that doesn't have player specific abilities, so I keep having to check the book. That's a bit annoying, and they are going to fix this in the next Kickstarter. They've made a 2.0 rulebook, and I'm going to get the upgrade pack, which allows me to get that rulebook. And certainly, if you buy this game from now onwards, you will get that proper rulebook. So maybe this won't be a problem in the future. But still, it was just a little bit of an annoyance in games, but because the game is so simple in general, you will be able to overcome that hurdle. That being said, the FAQ for this game is relatively high because when you've got all these different creatures with different ways that they move and interact with stuff, with all the abilities and stuff, it has generated quite a sizable FAQ of, well, hang on a minute, how does the warden work with this when it's in this area? How does this work if you put the shield down and the bug's already in the shield? How does that work? And, you know, there's a few bits that aren't quite as fully explained in the rules as they should be, and you have to look at an FAQ for that. Although it's a co-op, so you can kind of just decide which rule you're going to go with for that game and just go with it. So it's not like in a competitive game that you're completely unbalancing everything. You just might have to accept that the FAQs are going to turn up, and it is a legit problem, but not a mega one.
How hard can it be?
There are a couple of minor gripes with some fiddly aspects to some of the components here. I mean, they're good components, but one aspect that gets a little fiddly is these cubes. You've got red and green cubes for damage, basically. You have red health for yourself. They're easy to deal with. It's the green ones that are the problem, because the green ones are essentially how you mark damage on the creatures. But creatures don't have their own score pad or sheet or board. So you have to basically, as they're moving around, put the cubes next to the creature. Now, some of them will just die in the first hit or die in 1 hit, but if you've got something like a slasher that's got 2 hit points, you might only deal 1 HP to it. You've got a menace, you might have to deal like, 3 HP to it. The big oppressor, and now they might have 6 or 7 HP. So you could have 5 of these little green cubes by the miniature, which you've got to find space for, and then move them with the miniature. That gets a little bit fiddly at times. It's not a massive deal. There's usually enough space. The other thing that can get in the way is this board with the monsters on it. Yeah, these creature board is cool in one respect. It has all the rules on it, everything you need to know about each creature, and it's pretty big, people can see it. But where'd you put it? Because the game is already quite a table hog. I mean, you want to put the miniatures somewhere, you want to put the tray of components somewhere, you want to put the board, you want to put everybody's player board separately. It's not a small presence on the table. And so to find space for this is a little bit annoying. But the other thing is it's double-sided. 5 creatures on one end, 5 creatures on the other. If you're shooting at stuff or things are activating that involve mixed creatures, it's kind of annoying to have to take this and constantly flip it over and back again in order to try and remember what each one does. That gets a little bit annoying, to the point where I've also printed off the internet, these reference aids where somebody has basically printed them off in like sort of A5 sheets, so each player can have one. But again, I've still got to flip this over each time. I mean, I don't know how you'd be able to do it easily on just one thing, but maybe they could have cut down the size a little bit and just put it on one side. Maybe you could have had the detailed abilities on the back and then have the summary information on one side. Maybe that would work a little bit better, but it's not a massive deal. Most of these creatures have got stats that you can kind of remember, but you do need to know what their resistances are. So you need to have this reference somewhere. It's just kind of annoying that you've got to sort of put it on a side chair or stick it on the windowsill nearby or something in order to get it out of the way of the table. This one just gets a little bit fiddly, but aside from those gripes, not much else. I had a lot of trepidations about backing this on Kickstarter before, and I will admit that I'm playing a deluxe version, so bear in mind I've got all these fancy miniatures. Would I like the aesthetics as much with just cardboard bits and that? I don't know, but I've got to say, wow, absolute wow. Video game licensed games tend to be very hit and miss. Several have come out over time, and I find most of the part they just don't do the job well enough, or they're serviceable, or they've got problems, and it's more about the IP than it is anything else. Like, the IP costs so much money that the rest of the game suffers. But this one just does it so well. It does it justice. Everything about the video game, with a couple of things slightly abstracted, is represented here. I feel like I'm really playing the video game in a board game version. You know, the last time I played anything that represented the theme this well was probably Frostpunk earlier in the year. You know, really good representation of the video game. This is up there on those levels with how well it represents its original IP. But besides just being goo goo gaga for a theme that I already like, the gameplay is still good fun. There's good cooperation, there's lots of variety with the weapons and layouts. You've got all sorts of different creatures. Games can play out very differently depending on the event cards, what dwarfs you've got, whether you're playing solo or multiplayer, what scenario you play, is it a create your own, what weapon layouts you do. I mean, if I play a mission solo with Bosco, do the same mission twice in a row, I use a driller with a flamethrower and a plasma charger, I will have a very different game to playing the exact same mission again with different events coming out if I take the driller with a cryo cannon and you know, a shotgun or whatever, and a satchel charge rather than a cryo grenade. You know, all sorts of ways can change up the game. So the fact that this has endless replay value and a good amount of fun, really good solid fun. Yes, you're chucking dice to hits and the dice might hose you, but this is one of those types of games where you are expected to chuck dice. You know, people don't have a problem with this with stuff like Zombicide and that. You know, this isn't a Euro game, this is a Merifrashi co-op game. So, you know, you get into it, you have near misses, you have belter moments where somebody snipes out the last hit point of a Praetorian in its rear from miles away. I have done that in games, it's really good fun. And it's just really, really good fun to play. The miniatures look fantastic if you get them. There are some blemishes with the rulebook, maybe just being a little bit weird on the layout and maybe not easy to reference at times. And certainly there's a couple of little fiddly bits like the giant board, the cubes, and you know, the fact that this will have some FAQ moments, which they are available, but you're just going to have to bear that in mind. This hopefully will improve in the future with the revised rulebook. We'll have to see. But these flaws are small flaws. They are overlapped by everything else I enjoy in this game. Everything else is just so much fun. Now, I have to say, it's hard to give this a rating because I've got to be careful and not just go into fanboy mode. I've got to go into critic mode and say what this is. Now, there are a few things that can hurt it. You know, the rulebook being not as great as it could be with the FAQ moments is a problem. Some of the aspects being a tiny bit fiddly is a little problem, and certainly it's not a cheap game. I mean, if you buy this with the miniatures, you are paying a ton of money for this, and so you should expect it to be really good. It's a luxury item, you know, through and through. But the rest of it is so good. I don't think the flaws outweigh everything else. I mean, I was debating literally between a 9 and a 10. That's how much I enjoyed this game. And maybe from a critic standpoint, you know, full-on critic standpoint, you could say probably a 9 out of 10. But I get a lot of enjoyment from this, and I'm going to admit some of that is due to the theme, but even if you don't like the theme, this is still a great fun game. I'm giving it a 10 out of 10. I love this game. This is done so well, and it's so good to see another video license game done justice. I want to see more video license games brought to the tabletop and done as well with as much passion as this one, because this definitely feels like a passion product where they thought about the license, took some feedback from the creators of the video game, and really worked to make this a good, fun, light romp that I can play solo or with other players and have a great time. I've never had a dull moment with this, and even though I have to highlight those flaws, just like with other games I've given a 10 in the past, like Art Society and Ark Nova and Spirit Island, Sentinels in the Multiverse, they are not perfect games, they have flaws. But the flaws in this are small enough that they are far outweighed by the positives, hence I'm giving it a coveted 10 out of 10. I love it, I hope you guys will too, but of course, bearing in mind, it's not cheap. You're gonna need to either wait for this to come out on retail and forego the miniatures, or maybe you might want to ask Santa very nicely for an early Christmas present. So that's it for me on this episode of The Broken Meeple. If you like what you see, then please thumb it up on YouTube and thumb it up on Board Game Geek when it goes live on the site. Don't forget to check out the other reviews I've done lately, which have not been quite so stellar in terms of their ratings, such as the Ticket to Ride Legacy review, the Apiary review, and various other ones besides. And of course, don't forget to check out my Patreon and help me out with supporting the show. You know, games like this are not cheap. You know, running the channel is not cheap, but this channel can only run because of the support of Patreons, because I have a day job for other things. This one has to self-fund or be funded by patrons, or it just doesn't happen. And I thank everybody who contributes to that. It's because of you this channel can still exist. So take care, and remember, if the only good bug is a dead bug, it's still only a game. So take care, bye for now. Rock and stone!